Previously on Yugioh OCG, we took a look at Volume 6. The set prominently featured powerful new effect monsters and traps like Sangan and Solemn Judgment, and Griffor, our Lord and Savior. It definitely marked a new era in the game's debut year, as the Exodia deck gained significant strength, for now it could use specific cards to search out Exodia pieces for an auto-game win. More so, since these searchers could be activated from anywhere, which made discard cards like Graceful Charity and Magic Jammer gain additional benefits. But as the year enters its final month, yeah, that went fast, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Continues on its dark descent into the tombs, a Pharaoh card Gameotep. We start by entering the Chamber of Booster 6 on December 1st, 1999. This card asset proclaims to show your duelist, which made sense given the supplementary roster of cards was geared to the meta-inclined individual. The primary focus would be for the fusion mechanic. Yes, the mechanic that would be considered rogue at best with the likes of Musician King now gets support that was long overdue. Because fusion summoning was always awkward with you needing the fusion monster, its 2 or 3 materials, and the card polymerization to commence fusion. It's not like a lot of these cards were printed in the same set, they were released sporadically. So for a while, it was a strategy meant for hardcore fans. That said, how does B6 improve the purple cards? And will it be enough to shake up the meta? Firstly, we received fusion substitute monsters. Now you don't need every specific material for a fusion monster, such as you could summon Gaia the Dragon Champion with Curse of Dragon and Mystical Sheep, instead of trying to track down that ultra-rare Gaia the Fierce Knight from Volume 1 way back in the year. This opens up the possibilities of how one can create fusion, since any of the subs can go with any of the fusion monsters. Now, they were designed for only using one sub per fusion monster. You couldn't just use 2 Versagos or 1 Versago and a goddess with a third eye for a Crimson Sunbird. But you know how Series 1 works, right? The original text was confusing, creating misconceptions that you could use 2 subs. This would be cleared up in Series 2, but considering fusions are inherently coarse, it wasn't as big an issue as Ultimate Offering was. Thankfully, some search and salvage cards helped alleviate some of that crudeness. Fusion Sage is a forward design card in the sense that it searches poly straight from the deck. This is a fantastic way to access fusions, and a card I'm surprised didn't come to the TCG sooner than Torment Pack 6 in mid-2005. But you know how Series 1 works, right? Poly in the OCG is simply called Fusion, and the card's OCG text reads, add 1 fusion spell card from your deck to your hand. Does this mean fusion specifically, or any spell card that includes fusion support? This confused some people, even if additional fusion spells were non-existent at this point. The other alleviator was Monster Eye, the Poly Salvage monster. For 1000 life points, you can return a Poly from the grave to your hand. It's not bad if you have the life points to spare, more so since it isn't once per turn, meaning you could possibly pull some explosive fusion plays when you want, because dumping Poly with Charity only to return it at your convenience isn't the worst option out there. This is another card I'm surprised hasn't seen more TCG releases beyond 2 World Championship packs, which leads us to the main course. Here we get Cyberstein. While infamous in the halls of Yu-Gi-Oh's Royal Magical Library, by this point Stein was seen as a decent tech option in standard decks. This is because it can summon any fusion monster with a cost of 5,000 life points, and at this point in any position. A heavy slope, but one that can add some serious pressure if you summon the right monster for the job. Imagine bypassing the need of 3 specific cards in favor of just 1. It's a double-edged sword. More so when considering the fusions at the time were just big beaters. Well, some of them anyways. Hey, big beaters in a beatdown deck did allow for some aggressive pushes that the strategy needed in a meta where Exodia could jump out of the dark. Immediately summoning a Black Skull Dragon could make a difference in game state. Funny how a fusion-specific card became more used in general decks. Duelists who were fans of the more casual fusion deck would rather run the pure elements and not cheat around the method. If only a weaker Stein existed. At least this Series 1 iteration of Stein was less of the OTK machine it would be known as, so count your blessings of the Nile. If you're wondering about those last 3k life points after using Stein, then Gale Dogra's got your back. Even though you can't use both of them without any LP increase. This is a card I've discussed in its own video, but I'll repeat some of the sentiments here. Dogra is like a weaker Stein, see what I did there? That needs to use Reborn as a combo piece. Since by paying 3k LP, Dogra can send a fusion monster from the fusion deck to the grave. Despite the revival restriction being brought up most recently in October's Jump 48, it was only in reference to conditional monsters like Gate Guardian and Magician of Black Chaos, because fusions existed elsewhere, and at the time, there was no other way to summon them aside from the original method. Thus, Dogra was intended to function as one would expect, even if Konami would change their minds on the ruling come Series 2, completely mitigating Dogra's effect aside from certain graveyard plays like Bazoo, Chaos Summoning, or even Albaz fusions. Funnily enough, many play the gacha machines in hopes of pulling Poly. However, that card was not featured in the set that so heavily promoted it. At least it was recently reprinted in Volume 6. Instead of Poly or fusion support thereof, the set included a number of interesting cards you could obtain. Penguin Soldier bounces up to 2 monsters when flipped, much better than Hain, as aside from the obvious double bounce, it could potentially bounce itself to be reused. This would be a more versatile card to punish Stein plays, be a soft removal for the searchers without triggering their effects, or stall a game out. Green Kappa could likewise destroy 2 set back row cards. Sadly, it wouldn't be that useful given Duelist tended to shotgun back row cards in this environment. Speaking of, the set would cater to the metagame with cards like Magical Thorn, which would inflict burn damage when your opponent discards cards. This is a clear interaction with Charity, and was advertised as a combo with Morphing Jar. It even works with Dogra due to Thorn's original text. You know how Series 1 works, right? Because Thorn only cared for the card sent as long as it was due to an effect and not cost, so Jammer and Doomed wouldn't trigger it. Though if anyone did play Thorn, I bet they wouldn't care and use it against Jammer anyways. Everything is inferred, and quite frankly, it's frustrating to research this stuff. Anyway, Restructor Revolution was most likely a card made to punish hand hoarders more specifically than to chastise Morphing Jar, though the TCG name is a typo since Restructor isn't even a word, should have been restructured. We also got more relatively useless Tribal Destruction cards, and another budget-friendly tribute monster in Ushioni, of whom has ever so slightly higher attack than the mid-class monsters in V6. And that's all there is worth mentioning in B6. Yet we're not done with the card pool yet. Only 8 days later, we'd see the true Duel Monsters promo cards. Yep, this is our analog of Forbidden Memories, where buyers would receive randomly 3 of 5 promotional items to possibly add to their dueling repertoire. Being a significantly smaller lineup than the DM2 promos meant that these would be easier to obtain. First off would be Harpy's Pet Dragon, which would fit in any Harpy deck, if anyone played Harpies in the first place. The rest were all part of the new Metal Morph line. Fans of Bandit Keith rejoice. Metal Morph is a battle trap similar to Kunai with Chain. Heck, some even thought it would replace Kunai. It lets a weak monster almost assuredly attack over a strong one by gaining half of the target's attack. Now a Harpy Lady could punch over a Blue Eyes. Whoa. But it's only when you're attacking and thus dead during your opponent's turn aside from the minimal 300 buff. Needless to say, it did not replace the popular chain-attached Boomerang. The rest of the new cards tied into this one trap: Zoa, Metal Zoa, and Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon. The 2 metal monsters have a unique summoning rule in which they summon themselves from the deck. Interesting, if not for the fact that the cost of a high-level vanilla equipped with a trap buff for a monster with barely an attack upgrade wasn't worth it, if you even considered it an upgrade in the first place, because while their base attack is higher, they lose the half attack effect. They needed attack prowess closer to Gate Guardian. That said, some people enjoyed the metal theme, but it was more of a cult following than anything. Lastly, alongside the game was a strategy guide that included the long-awaited Black Magic Ritual. Now duelists could finally summon that Magician of Black Chaos they pulled back at the Tokyo Dome. Finally, there was a second ritual monster option that wasn't the pitifully weak Dokuro Rider. Manga enjoyers were surely happy. Well, they better be, because if not, the card would not be meta viable in this meta climate, which is unfortunate since Black Chaos is a fairly strong special summonable monster, something that could be played in a more real-life situation than discarding and reviving a Blue Eyes or using Stein for Black Skull or whatever people are still doing with Ultimate Offering. Another card that took the TCG way too long to get. So then, what was the meta scene like? Booster 6 changed a lot while not changing much at the same time. It was important in making fusion plays possible in more than just a rogue strategy, but their best weapon fitted better in standard beatdown decks. It helped Standard keep a line of defense against the toxicity of Exodia. That is to say, if you didn't let Exodia play Solitaire and avoid the issue altogether. Really, the best defense against the Forbidden deck was the fact that it was still difficult to build and strategy stigma at the time. For those who did get the deck running, they would start to cut Change of Heart to avoid enemy morphing jars, as well as adding Solemn Judgment to stop said jars and Needleworms. They were adapting. Speaking of Solemn, you know how Series 1 works, right? Some people at the time weren't even sure if cards like Solemn and Horn of Heaven could stop flips. While I use modern terms like flip and special summons, old terminology just used words like becomes face up, put, and fuse. But it appears that due to a lack of rulings by Konami, the player base made their own verdict on the issue and ruled that the summon negation cards could be used on any action that places a monster onto a monster's zone, and not the thesaurus of words the cards themselves use. Either that or Konami mentioned it somewhere that we currently don't have access to. Overseas research, yay! In summary, Booster 6 is an important yet weird side set. It's a small addition to the card pool, yet more effective than some volume sets. Effective in regards to its constructed deck push, and not a complete overhaul to the meta itself. All the new fusion support was much needed, but it's like giving out a participation ribbon to make the deck feel important, while the shadow of the actual athletes loomed over it like the Great Pyramid of Giza. Oh, but Duelist, we gave you fusion support, Harpy support, Metal Morph cards, and even a way to summon Magician of Black Chaos. What more do you want? Konami so enthusiastically proclaims. Nevertheless, they are fun cards, if nothing else. And a lot to discuss for that matter, something this series is evidently growing in. Goodness. You could argue this is where the metagame truly began, with card theory and tech becoming a crucial part of Yu-Gi-Oh!, where player expression was at an all-time high, more than in the past where duelists picked their favorite flavors of Equip Magic. Though it was transparent that the two popular flavors nowadays are simply vanilla and chocolate, with not much room for mint chocolate chip. Dang it, now I'm hungry. Join my Patreon so I can buy some ice cream. That's the real boost I need.